Yeah. Yeah.
What is up, y'all? Welcome in Paige, Kuhn, and Adam Kramer for the No Punts Allowed podcast, bringing you the first AP Top 25 of the season. Of course, no football has been played, but we love to make lists and rank teams in college football. That is the nature of the sport. Adam, first glance at this, what are you liking?
Well, I'm liking that we're back, first and foremost.
Yeah.
We are back. This is the sign that we are back. And I think there's some intrigue in the top five. We'll get to that, especially if you've been following the coaches poll. Who doesn't love the coaches poll? That's a precursor to this. But for everyone out there that says preseason rankings don't matter, first off, we love it. You engage with it, and football is back. But let's look. The last 3 years, Paige, the national champion has been ranked in the top three, okay, of this preseason poll. And of the championship game, all but one team, TCU against Georgia, we were there. There's a really bad football game. We're not going to talk about it, was ranked in the top 10. So we
Yes.
get it. No games have been played. Roster tracking is harder than ever with the transfer portal and all these different things. But if you're good, you're good, right? And so the expectations really do start here. And this will have an impact the way these teams are ranked in the AP poll and beyond moving forward.
Absolutely. And I think Penn State fans will be really happy to hear that because they are in the top three, which I think you and I were discussing before. One of the biggest things we were talking about is Ohio State going to be ranked above Penn State? We got Clemson at 4. We both are really high on Clemson's chances to win the national championship. So them being outside that statistic, maybe they change it after the last 3 years. All right. But we will get into this top 25, run through each of the teams, get in the chat. We want to hear from you. The best part of doing this show is responding to the chat. We want to hear who you guys think is way too high, too low. Who do you think should be in? We will start with a few honorable mentions. So teams that did receive votes. We've got some Big 12 teams really just sitting right outside, which that conference out of any is probably the one that's most wide open. But BYU, Utah, Baylor, are the first three out, and then Louisville, USC also in there. Georgia Tech, also a team that has a big game to start their season. So I do think there are a lot of teams that may not be in this, but may eventually get into it. Guys, last year there were 11 teams in the top 25 that didn't end in the top 25. So don't worry if your team is not in right now. We might make it in there a little bit later. But Kramer, let's start at 25. Boise State. We were saying group of 5 team obviously going to get a spot in the college football playoff. Boise State obviously making it last year. What do you think of this team without Ashton Genty?
That's it. It's a really tough evaluation because when you think of Boise State, you think of Ashton Genty, all of that production. Now, I thought that Madsen, the quarterback, was able to work his way into this offense. So when Genty was struggling in halves and we would talk about it, they would find a way to make plays. But on one hand, I'm really happy that a non like this isn't just dominant of blue bloods, and that's what it felt like it was going to be. So you
Yeah.
and I, this is very, very good. One of these teams getting into the playoff. On the other hand, good luck figuring out what one of the best running backs we've ever seen, how that team's going to look like. They're still good. They're really well coached. And again, experience at quarterback, I think, is going to be paramount moving forward.
Yeah, still pretty deep at running back as well. Got a transfer from Fresno State. So still look for them to be pretty dominant and be the favorite to make the college football playoff. At 24, we have Tennessee. So big offseason. You lose Nico Iamaleava. That's late in the game. Have to bring in a new quarterback, kind of learn the system. How do you feel about this Tennessee team? And I'm sure Tennessee fans, because they're very vocal in the chat usually, are not really
Always.
thrilled with this 25, 24. Or do you think, hey, maybe they're excited because they thought they'll be left out because of all the changes that happened in the offseason?
No, they're going to be mad. They're always mad. I mean that in a good way. They want the most of their program, and what a weird offseason. So the loss of Dylan Sampson at running back, I think, is even bigger than Nico. Like this was the dominant storyline. It felt like of all of college football, and yet the storyline of Tennessee is probably defense, which is kind of weird when you think of Heupel and the quarterbacks and all of the hype. So the defense with a lot of really good players. I think the real challenging part, and we'll talk about Oklahoma and others, is there's this log jam of SEC teams outside of the assumed commodities, right?
Yeah.
And I think Tennessee is in the thick of that. It would not shock me at all if they outperform expectations of where they're starting here.
Absolutely. A team that has been talked about all offseason, Texas Tech. We've heard a lot of numbers thrown around of how much they played for their transfer portal class, which is the number 2 behind LSU. Thoughts on Texas Tech and if we should buy into the hype? I feel like we've talked a lot about the blueprint and formula of college football, new age, obviously revenue sharing. This offseason, you got to pay whatever you really wanted to these players without it being on the books. So Texas Tech took full advantage of that. Do you think it's going to be something that translates on the field?
Eventually, yes, eventually, and obviously they're landing super recruits in future classes. They're here to party. David Bailey from Stanford, I loved, and one of the biggest portal gets that we saw. Really good offensive line, staying with Morton at quarterback, which makes sense, was pretty good. Again, another team in a really weird conference, meaning it the best possible way, that we're gonna have to figure out. So I think it's there for the taking, right? If you're playing in that Big 12, like who's gonna be this year's Arizona State if it's not Arizona State again, right? And I think this is a team that's thoroughly in that conversation. But I do like the pieces that you mentioned up front. They're putting their money in places where it does matter, and I think that will work out for them.
Now, I know we got to move along because the chat is dying to get to the top 10 because I just see so many
Vibes,
overrated.
good
That's my
vibes.
favorite part of this. Overrated, and this team should be above that. However, we do have to show some love here to the bottom half. So, Iowa State and
Yep.
Ole Miss. Any thought? I feel like those are both teams that could potentially make waves in their conferences, but are definitely sitting outside where people don't really have a ton of faith. So, what does it mean to be in this like lower half of that top 25?
Well, if you're Iowa State, you have a quarterback in Rocco Beck, and you had the best pass defense in the country last year. The question is, they lost a lot. So how are they
Yeah.
going to validate? And for Ole Miss, you could say the same thing, right? We're watching Jackson Dart now look the
Yes.
part in preseason. All the rookie quarterbacks so far so good, but I mean, this was a team that was really in that playoff mix. New quarterback who I think we like a lot. All the signs point to Simmons being really, really good. But Lane Kiffin has to keep doing this again and again.
Yeah.
Number 2 scoring defense, by the way. Lane Kiffin coach team, number 2 in scoring defense. I don't even know who you are anymore, Lane. But I think
He
you're
reads
right.
X. He
Yeah, well,
reads
he
X,
does.
so he
He's
knows he
he's
needed a
watching
defense.
this right now, so kudos. But I think a lot of that will be quarterback play. Lane has found a way with QBs. I think he'll do it again.
Indiana at 20. So, one of the hardest things to do, I think, in college football, if you rely heavily on a transfer portal class or senior guys, you are going to get gutted a little bit. Indiana does have a lot to replace, but do you think they're capable of rebuilding? I mean, it gives me sort of Florida State vibes when they obviously were in the conversation for college football playoff, and then following year looked awful because it is really hard to re-up and revamp that quickly. Do you think Indiana will do it?
Not to that level. Like
Yeah,
let's be honest. This was a really good team with a great coach that found a stratosphere that they've not seen.
yeah.
Awesome, and they're still a threat. You've got Mendoza in at QB, so you're going to try and run it back in this era of college football is finding, lightning in a bottle. I
Yes.
just think it's going to be harder, right? This was a top 10 defense last year. How much of that was them? How much of that was the schedule? I think it's a
Yeah.
solid mix of both. They should be here, right? But I think it's uphill climb from this point
Yeah.
forward.
Texas A&M at 19. So one win away essentially from a trip to the SEC championship, which they have not done. Um, does Mike Elko get the job done this year for them?
I am drinking the Kool-Aid here. I don't know about you.
Yeah.
I don't know how you feel. We have not talked about this, but maybe the best O line in college football.
Yes.
And then obviously a quarterback who took over last year and Reed, who was as exciting of a player as we've seen. And we're going to assume that he's going to develop as a passer. And then you've got Elko, which is like the assumed like this defense will be good. Like I buy this one, Paige. How do you feel about this team? Because I get the ranking here. I understand. I'm willing to say that they're going to end the season ranked in the top 10. That's where I'm at right now.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny that you use the word buy-in because certainly we know that the pockets are very deep at Texas
Yeah,
A&M, and it
yes.
hasn't really translated in the past. I think this schedule leads to having the opportunity to get big wins to be considered for the college football playoff. I would not be surprised if they were an at-large situation for the SEC.
There we go. All right, we're feeling good. A&M, another fan base that's not shy, by the way. So for the
Yes.
time being, we're off on to a good start.
Yes, 18, we've got Oklahoma. Now, I cannot wait for the graphic to come up about Oklahoma's schedule because holy smokes, Oklahoma has it rough. But I will say, this is probably the best team that they have had since Brent Venables has gotten there. I do think they will be super successful. John Mateer, very, very hyped this offseason. His offensive coordinator is coming with him. That helps significantly in terms of being ready and prepared, especially to play in the SEC. I am looking forward to watching this Oklahoma team against Michigan because I do think it'll be a marker for where each of these teams are to start the season, where we don't really know a ton about what's on their roster.
Now, this is the AP poll, so we're going to try to ignore schedule, right? Because we're evaluating these teams just on talent.
Yes.
It's hard to ignore the schedule. Their win total is 6.5, right? So like that to me, for a team that's gotten a lot of buzz for good reason, when you look at not just Mateer, but Jay Nott, who I like a lot, like this is one of the most exciting backfields in football, and yet that speaks to what they're going to have to do. Venables just got more money, right? They're committed to him,
Yeah.
but he's got to win. He's got to win bigger than 6.5, right? This is the interesting part that Oklahoma finds itself, and you need a Cam Ward like impact at Mateer, and I think you can actually get it.
Yeah, no, the hype for him this offseason has been significant. It wasn't just maybe one person putting it out there. It's been a lot of people that have been watching him play and are very much looking forward to seeing him play in this conference. Kansas State. So a team that I think really does have potential to win their conference. I don't think their schedule is that brutal. I think what they're returning is significant. I think how you win in college football is having a veteran quarterback presence. They have that and the skill set that he has. So I genuinely think they could be one of the teams that end up being in the conversation as we're super close to the end of regular season about that Big 12 championship game. And obviously that means you get to go to the college football playoff.
Yeah, in terms of, we just talked about Oklahoma's backfield. Avery Johnson, Dylan Edwards, really, really good. Johnson just has to take that next leap. They did not close well. They lost 3 out of 5. And you're looking at the schedule, a little schedule talk,
Mhm.
at Baylor, at Oklahoma State. These are teams that you should beat, environments that can be tricky. That is where Kansas State needs to avoid, right? The loss to Kansas, games like that. But
Yeah.
right now, you're looking at that conference. This is a potential playoff team.
Yeah. Uh, 16 SMU. For me, this is a little high. I don't know how you feel. I'm wondering if last year's success really played into where they're ranked right here.
How do we talk about a program with resources like Texas Tech,
Yeah.
right? And here's another one, right? So it ended so poorly, and it shouldn't have, because making the playoff, and then you were at that frozen playoff game where they threw 100 interceptions against Penn State was really bad. But Jennings is really good. Offensive line is really good. They're kind of built more like a traditional Power Four team,
Yes.
and they play in a conference still that's conducive to win a bunch of games, right? I mean, we're still associating ourselves with them being in the ACC. So
Yeah.
I agree with you. Maybe it's a smidge high, and yet it would not surprise at all if they're in that conversation come November, because I don't necessarily think there's a lot of legitimate contenders outside the obvious in Clemson. We'll talk about here in a bit.
Yeah. 15, we've got Florida. For me, I feel like this is slightly low, and I think maybe the reason it is because everybody's worried about the health of DJ Lagway. Of course, we know that their season really depends on him. I know um, there's a lot of stuff in the SEC where you're like, okay, tough schedule, you want to make it. Billy Napier last year, was he going to keep his job? Ended out seeing DJ Lagway develop. Injuries are going to be the major concern. I am a little concerned, and I think that's honestly what went into this vote being at 15 because I do think they are better than a Michigan, in my opinion.
Okay, I got to be careful with how I say this. I think DJ Lagway can be outstanding. I also
Yes.
think maybe we need to pump the brakes a smidge
Oh,
when you look at
wow.
how he played last year, which
Yeah.
is some wow throws, right? Wow moments.
Yes.
But statistically and in games, like still there's and it's reasonable to stay a young quarterback still has to develop, right? So I'm there, but I don't think I'm as far as everybody else is. Now, I will say the job they did navigating just an unbelievable schedule was tremendous last year. This is a team after that Miami game, we're like, they're done. And that was a job well done. I like keeping Napier. I just maybe want to pump the brakes a little bit on a young quarterback who's been in a walking boot, hopefully is okay. That probably is still gonna learn a thing or two. And in the SEC, again, I think it's tough. South Carolina, Oklahoma, you look at the depth at that position there. I think it's starting to grow a little bit. So like Florida, maybe just a smidge high for me.
Okay. Michigan. I'm going to let you go. The
So
chat is talking about Michigan a lot. I'm going to let
okay,
you go on
well,
Michigan first.
all right, you bring in Bryce Underwood, who is going to get time and is probably like that's part of the plan, right? You have an electric young quarterback that you have to play, whether he
Yep.
splits time or not, who knows? This was the 131st ranked passing offense last year. 131. Like that's bad. Okay. The defense was really good. It lost some really good players. Now, you and I were talking about the schedule. There it is. Again, minimal schedule talk.
Yeah.
I still need to see it. I need to see it with the head coach. I need to see it with the young quarterback, who, by all accounts, is going to be electric at some point. They obviously did well in the portal, but I think losses on defense, I still have some major questions here.
Completely. I would agree with you. I think their schedule lends me to believe that they could end up in this area of the rankings, but as a preseason ranking, I would have put them much lower. I think there's other teams that we know much more about and can confidently say that they'll win their first couple of week matchups. Where Michigan, I'm not so sure. But after that, they can win. Their schedule is very doable. I think if they lose both of their big games in the season, they can still make the college
I,
football playoff, which is kind of crazy. And I know we talked a lot about Indiana's schedule last year. Michigan's schedule is far easier, in my opinion, than what that schedule looked like. And I think Michigan is going to get the benefit of the doubt because they're not Indiana.
yes,
So,
for sure.
but I think this is far too high.
And by the way, last year, 131 offense, beat Ohio State, beat Alabama, beat USC.
Yeah,
Not bad with no offense, like
with no
but
offense.
no consistent
However,
offense. Yeah.
however, that's not this team.
It's not, but it is if you get some offense and you assume you've still got whether you believe in him or not, you still have some Jim Harbaugh recruited players on defense there. Like you
Yeah.
you have guys that are going to be stars. If you can get something. As an Iowa fan, I've done this every year, okay? I know the route of trying to talk yourself into having an offense. There will be an
Yes.
offense there. I'm just not sure it's going to
It'll be
come
better, but it's not hard to be
in
better.
September. Exactly. Yes, that is true too. Also
I
true for
didn't
an Iowa fan.
on my bingo card for today. I did not have having getting Michigan fans mad today. I didn't mean to come that hard, but it mostly is. I think you're still going to make the playoff because look at your schedule. But in terms of preseason, don't love it. South Carolina, a team that I very much advocated at the end of last year for talk of college football playoff because I think what they did at the end of last season, the momentum that they had. I know we said that, this Michigan team last year doesn't really matter how they ended it. This South Carolina team, they're bringing back significant pieces that I think are going to be true to the testament of getting through what their schedule looks like, but also just a team that could potentially be an at-large bid outside of coming out of the SEC.
Every time you watch them, Lenore Sellers flashed. Now, again, taking that next step, being more consistent, I think you have to let him be himself. One
Mm-hmm.
of the best watches in all of college football last year.
Yes.
Lost some production up front. Dylan Stewart going to be an absolute dude. I like him. Yeah, and last year, to your point, one last six of the last seven was in a position where we were mad that they weren't getting more serious playoff consideration. And
Yeah.
so you grab the baton from that and you're in a position to really be a disruptor. So probably a tougher team to rank. And again, back to the logjam in the SEC, they are very much a part of that discussion, but I think getting the benefit of the doubt here and for good reason.
At number 12, we have Illinois, which I saw in the chat. Quite a few people were very confused about why Illinois is in this position. Well, they are returning 76% of their production, and they're basically a team that I would consider a lock to make the college football playoff. That's aggressive. I
Oh my
know
God.
preseason where we haven't seen it, but I think what they're returning, and they are well coached, and the league that they play in, I would be comfortable saying that. I love this position for them at 12. I think this is a perfect ranking for Illinois. I know a lot of the chat was saying overhyped. Go back and watch some tape because this is going to be a really good football team.
I like their quarterback. I will say this: 2 wins in overtime, six by 10 points or less, right? This was the reverse Kansas of last
Yeah.
year. If you're looking for a team like Kansas, who I think could end up in the top 25, how does that translate, right? Yes, it's a different year, a different team, but eventually college footballs. So Illinois offensively has a court, probably one of the best quarterbacks they've had in a really long time. Now it'll be interesting to see how you do manage those close games because there will be some. When you look at the schedule there, it's favorable, but even those, Duke, Indiana, those are tricky. Schedule
Yeah.
works out for them. Now you got to win those close ones just like you did last year.
Yeah, well, and I think the biggest thing is that they are returning so much that you've been in those games, you've been in those close games, you know how to win them,
Yes.
and I think that's going to be the key for them in the Big Ten. All right, we've got Arizona State, another team returning a lot. Um, do I have a little bit concern of the hype train being really big because of course Kenny Dillingham, one of the most likable guys in all of college football, what he did last year where they obviously were not ranked, they were picked last to win the Big 12. So I do think that there's a lot of like chip on their shoulder, but now they're the favorites. Now you got to change up the narrative a little bit on them. Confident they could still dominate, but I don't think their schedule is going to be as easy to get to the college football playoff as it was last year, maybe. So curious to see how they manage after maybe not having the everybody us against everybody mentality this year.
Also the post Scattaboo world, right? So obviously Levitt back is huge. Jordan Tyson, I really, really like at wide receiver. I think Levitt will be better. Got to take care of himself. There's a couple quarterbacks that are so critically important to what their teams do. And that's a guy that just wants to play, on fire, right? Scrambling and dashing for every yard. But for them, defense, again, like we talked about Lane Kiffin, they went
Yeah.
from 109 to 37 in scoring defense. This was a team that was 100-1 to win their conference before last year. 100-1. I think they can validate it. I think they're really well coached. And as long as Levitt is healthy, I think they're going to be a problem for everybody. We saw it against Texas. We saw them really kind of announce their arrival. And if you have a quarterback and you have a coach that can scheme like this, they're going to be a problem.
Miami at 10. We both
No,
saw the AP poll before this started and went, wow, okay, sure. Miami definitely getting the benefit of the doubt. I did not know the Carson Beck real like confidence was there in a lot of people. I did not realize that people still really had faith in him because clearly that is what is pushing them up towards the next level. I know they did get in the transfer portal, but Miami at 10 feels a little high for me.
they've recruited well. I'm going to start with saying nice things. They've recruited well. They've developed in certain positions really well. I think the defense will be better. But coaching is still a liability to me. 120th in penalty yards last year. And we obviously know the other in-game crystal ball things that have happened. And then it really depends how you feel about Carson Beck because the second half against Alabama, Carson Beck from last year, really, really good. Special player. The year before, special player. But now a shoulder surgery and a lot of turnovers later, you at least have to pause and say, what are we going to get? If they get him right, I think 10 is probably appropriate, but you lose the number one overall pick
Yeah.
and a kid that was amazing for them and covered up probably a lot of holes, defensively in particular. I think this one's a little iffy for me. Should probably be in the top 15, maybe not the top 10.
All right, we've got LSU at 9 and Alabama at 8. I've seen a lot of conversation in the chat debating sort of these two. LSU returning Garrett Nussmeier and also bringing in the number one transfer portal class. How that translates is to be determined, but I do think having the Nuss bus as your quarterback is still significant, and I think this ranking is perfect for them.
His knee is apparently okay, according to Brian
Yep.
Kelly, which would impact this ranking a lot. Really, really good. Has to limit the turnovers. You think that's going to get better. I have questions though. Like offensive line for them was really good. You've got Campbell's gone. You've got your best tight end and Taylor gone, thankfully to my Jets. Very happy about that. And then you have Harold Perkins, who like we're trying to figure out where they're going to use him and how they're going to use him coming off a
Yeah.
major injury. This team defensively, right? So better last year, went from 81st to 59th. This is LSU, right? We can't have that. Like it has to be better. Otherwise, there's going to be so much pressure on the quarterback, which we saw last year. They can outscore you. You can get a game like you had against Missouri, but it's putting too much pressure on the offense. So the defense has to take a major step up here.
Yeah, and I will say I think they did properly fill a lot of the holes that they had on LSU. Alabama at 8. You think maybe that they are a little too low in this poll?
I like this team. Yes, I like this team, which if you say that about Alabama, you're going to get booed, you're going to get cheered. That's the mix. That's the game that is Alabama football,
Yes.
right? It has been for a really long
You
time.
homer.
Now, look, we're talking about quarterbacks in the SEC. It's fair to say is Ty Simpson the guy? They've obviously got some other options, including a five-star true freshman. I think he's going to be fine. Ryan Williams is great. Caden Proctor. You have two of the best individual athletes on offense. I think is going to help. And you have a defense that was good last year that feels a little bit more Alabama-ish in terms of Lawson and Overton guys they have. So yes, I do like this Alabama team the closer we get, which again is not necessarily new, but I think there's reason to question. If we're going to talk about coaching, a little harsh on Brian Kelly, we could do the same thing with Alabama. Some of their in-game stuff last year wasn't exactly great. So I think DeBoer has plenty to prove.
At 7, we have Oregon. We know that they came into the Big Ten and said, hey, it's not too tough for us. We heard the West Coast isn't going to be able to handle this and proved that they could. Dan Lanning, obviously a very good football coach. Big wins last year, didn't get it done in the college football playoff. New starting quarterback, wide receiver room took a hit, but also they've beefed up a little bit. So thoughts on Oregon at 7?
Yeah, how do you feel about, Dante Moore, who came from UCLA, was an amazing get last year when they got Dylan Gabriel to let him redshirt and kind of learn. I liked what I saw from him as a freshman. And then the question you hit it on quarter or wide receivers. So DeCarron Moore, their elite recruit, I think could have a Jeremiah Smith like impact. Different player, not 6'4", but is going to be used. And I really like the defense too. So again, we're talking about
Yeah.
historically offensively focused teams with a lot of players up front. I have no problem where Oregon is ranked right now.
Number 6, we've got Notre Dame. For me, this is a bit high. I think maybe obviously what they did last season kind of maybe filtering into this a bit, but I still think there's a lot of question marks. I mean, they're returning one of the best players in college football, of course, but again, you can't get so focused, like you were just saying, on offense. There's a lot that they do have to replace talent wise. So curious how you feel about Notre Dame at 6.
It's funny. We're talking a lot about players in portal. I think the Al Golden loss is huge too, and Chris Ash is really, I think, solid. Golden was so good for them. Like, that's a lot. That's a huge, huge vacancy to fill. And then the other thing I keep hearing about, and I'm sure you do as well, we saw him at the national championship game warming up in CJ Carr. Like, boy, the hype on him is I'm hearing a lot of really, really good things. Now we have to see it, but this is his show, and obviously having a running back like Jeremiah Love to hand to is helpful. But you're putting a lot of faith in a quarterback that we haven't seen much of, and yet everything I've heard has been so overwhelmingly positive. So time will tell.
Now, I want to go to the chat because these top 5 teams are the most talked about part of this poll in the chat. Reed Blanchard says, how is UGA not number 1? Are they factoring in that Gunnar Stockton drives like an old truck and has a strong work ethic?
I love it.
That must be a Georgia fan. I'm sure there's still questions. I think Georgia has proven that you can win with just weapons around a guy. Offensively, going to be probably better than they were last year's struggles. But I think defensively, always pretty sound. 5 feels safe for me. I don't know that they should be number 1 based on what we know about this team.
I agree. I like this spot. We can just agree, handshake, although clearly feel differently. Number 1 defense in 2021, number 5 in 2022, right? Number 5 in 2023, number
Yes.
23 last year. Now
Yeah.
you're a top 25
Down
defense, down year. You're a top 25 defense, so that's really good. That's not
Yes.
Georgia though. That really isn't Georgia. And you have a young, I love what I saw from Gunnar Stockton, by the way, in that playoff game. Like
Yeah.
he was getting clobbered, right? That was an offensive line issue. They had drops. I thought he had an amazing game. I like him a lot. you had Branch from USC and you had Noah Thomas. I love that they went to the portal and said we need to upgrade our weapons. So I think that if this all comes together, it could be really, really good. Strangely for them, I would start on the defensive side where they have to be top five, top 10, where we're used to seeing them.
Yeah. Next up, let's go to Clemson. Lot of talk in the chat about how is Clemson ranked at 4? Why is Clemson ranked at 4? You and I have significant confidence in what they are bringing back. Cade Klubnik, obviously the heart of that offense, and continued to get better as he's been at Clemson. I think this is maybe a year that Dabo Swinney reminds us that he is a national championship winning coach and is a really good ball coach. Brought in a defensive coordinator that we are big fans of. And I do think this Clemson team is going to be very good. Another comment said, is Clemson and Miami ranked high because they are actually good or because the ACC is hot dog water? That's a fair assessment of the ACC. And I will say Clemson is certainly getting the benefit of the doubt in terms of preseason, who's going to make the college football playoff because of the conference they play in. However, I do think this is a team that can win college football games against the Big Ten and the SEC. Miami, I don't have that confidence. I think Miami
Correct.
is getting it, but I would say that's not true for Clemson.
That is the hot dog water situation in Miami. Like that, by the way. Clemson, no, different. They're built different. Your O line is basically intact. You've got legitimate, NFL players on defense. So part of the challenge with evaluating Clemson, I think it's kind of what we did with Harbaugh. Dabo is not a guy that's loved outside of Clemson. In Clemson, they love him. But this team is really, really good. This is a team that I'm toying around with winning the national championship
Yeah.
because Klubnik took such a rapid ascension last year in terms of quarterback play. I didn't think he had that level. TJ Parker on defense. You've got NFL players all over the place. It's just wide receiver still, which has been a bit of a question mark. And can Klubnik validate this and win a Heisman? I think the answer to that is potentially yes.
Yeah. In the chat again, Purell God, I'm mad at how my Buckeyes are at 3 when they're the defending champs. Well, how this works is we do not pay attention. And also, they lost a lot. They had what, 14 players go to the NFL? So that's not even just transferring and all of those things. They've got a lot to replace for Ohio State. So we don't know as much about this team. And I think that's why they're sitting at 3. Is there still a lot of questions? I do have faith in Ryan Day. I mean, we know that they recruit well. We know the players on their roster are elite. What they are returning is wonderful. But I do think Ohio State not going to give them the benefit of the doubt just because they won the championship last year.
Not only that, but you lost two of the best coordinators on both sides in Knowles and
Yeah.
Chip Kelly, right? So new roster, and I like what they did with Hartline putting him in. I think he's going to be great. How involved is Day on play calling, all that stuff still to
Yeah.
come. So the roster's overturned. The good news is you have arguably the two best players in college football in Jeremiah Smith and Caleb Downs. You have Sonny
Yeah.
Styles. You've got a quarterback in Julian Saint who I think he's going to be excellent. Is he excellent right now? Right? That's the question. There's some really interesting games early. So I think Ohio State's actually getting the benefit of the doubt here, which is okay.
Yeah.
We did this with Alabama and Georgia for years. When you win a national championship, you're going to be validated in most
Yeah.
instances. I think this is fine for them.
Number 2, we have Penn State, which I'm sure a lot of Ohio State fans are very, very upset about. Noah V23 in the chat. Until James Franklin proves he can win a big game, they don't deserve to be ranked that high. All right, guys. We're gonna have we have this conversation every
Yeah.
year. Cole Harrion in the chat, Penn State over at OSU is criminal. This no football has been played this year. Penn State has the roster, has the coaching staff around James Franklin to be very, very good and potentially win a national championship. I know that that seems insane to say because James Franklin is still their head coach, but everything else is going right for them. Will that stop them from winning a national championship? Probably. But you guys, it is valid. If you look at that roster and what they returned, this is certainly a team that can win. Also, they bought in to do it. That's the thing. They had players that could go to the NFL. They took the paycheck and said, you know what, we're going to come
Yep.
back. We're going to build around Drew Aller, they're getting him support. They went in the portal and got wide receivers because last year Drew got no help. He got help from tight end, obviously a very good one. But there's a lot of quick evaluation on this Penn State team, especially from last year, and specifically about Drew Aller. And I think you got to look at the pieces around him. And Penn State finally is giving him the pieces around him that are going to put him in a position for them to be successful and actually win in the college football playoff against teams that are in, the Big Ten and the SEC.
Yeah, no, well said. I think the running backs are great, and Singleton and Allen. You spent big on
Yeah,
running backs, which is
you
good.
did.
They should. Those guys are amazing. The offensive line is great. Wide receiver was the big one, right? So you go and you get Kyron Hudson in the portal. You get some other people because you had games where wideouts were truly a non-factor, 0 catches. And Aller has to be better though. Like we can say all these things. You've invested a lot, and Aller can't do what we saw him do in the playoff game, which was lose them that game. Now, it wasn't just him, but he has to be better. My only concern, I think Tyler Warren was all world, and I think Abdul Carter was all world at the end playing
Yeah.
with one arm. So I love
Yeah.
this roster, but I think they lost two of the top 10 players in college football last year. Now you have to have somebody step up. Wide receiver is the
Yes.
one I would absolutely look at.
Yes. And number one, we have Texas. The Arch Manning era, of course, is what everyone is going to talk about. This defense is going to be insane.
Yep.
I think the last couple of years to win a national championship, you had to have one of the best scoring defenses in the country. Texas will have just that. I feel very confident in this number one ranking. I think you could have made the case for probably the 1, 2, and 3 for this.
Yep.
But do you think that maybe there's a little too much Arch hype? And are you concerned at all about that first game against Ohio State?
I think him as a passer is going to be a work in progress. I think they have the defense where they're going to scheme accordingly. And Steve Sarkisian, by the way, is pretty good at this whole scripting thing. So the offensive line also, which was so good, is going to be revamped. They
Yeah.
were so banged up at running back last year. I really am interested to see what we get from CJ Baxter. That was a cursed position for them and has been. Getting them healthy, I think, is really, really helpful. But to your point on defense, Anthony Hill, Colin Simmons, you had some guys come back. I think this is one of the best defenses we've seen since that Georgia defense that really won a national title with Stetson Bennett, your favorite quarterback.
Yeah.
And I think it has a chance to be exceptional. So I think in that sense, you could take the pressure off of Arch a little bit, but I don't know if that's possible, right? His existence is going to be a big deal. I do think it's not going to come easy for him naturally. They're going to use his legs, and then eventually I think he'll settle in, but rely on the defense first, which is odd considering you have a Manning playing quarterback.
Yeah, someone in the chat, it went away, but someone said Arch is a work in progress, but Cade Klubnik can win the Heisman. That's a testament
Yes.
to what we know about them. We know
Yes.
that Cade has played in a lot of football games, and you have to have a veteran quarterback to win a lot of football games. His team's going to be in a position, and also team success helps. Like, say Texas, loses a game that maybe they shouldn't lose, or they play in a much tougher conference. So yeah, it's going to be a little bit harder for Arch to win the Heisman. However, the hype is certainly there, and we're not saying he can't, but there's a reason, Cade Klubnik is being talked about as one of the favorites to win the Heisman as well.
Cade Klubnik played a lot of bad football to get in this position.
He's done it already, yes.
No, he had like that's what he needed he needed to get beat up. He needed to struggle, and Arch just hasn't had to do that yet. So I don't even think this is a knock on Arch. He's an exceptional talent, and he's going to be really good. And they've handled this situation so well on Texas's front, on the Manning front, and Arch, by all accounts, is ready for this. Having Ryan Wingo, by the way, doesn't hurt. Having a lot of the pieces they have doesn't hurt, but even they lost some really key position players. So I think this is actually reasonable discord on Texas, which is the defense is elite. Arch has the ability to be great. When are those things going to align properly? I think it will be this year, but I just think it's going to take some time.
The chat has some different opinions. So if you do want to share those opinions, you can do that at the No Punts Allowed social media accounts, and we will talk about it more. But we have to wrap up here. We appreciate you all hanging out. We love the chat. It's our favorite part of doing the show. We will be doing it every Sunday. So come hang out with us during the season. We're excited for week 1 games. A lot of big matchups. A lot of teams will move in and out of this top 25 throughout the season. But we appreciate you hanging out with us. For Paige and Adam, have a good week, and we will talk to you guys when there is football back.